Okay, how many true crime podcasts do you think there are in the world?
Bajillion and 5.
Yeah, true. I mean, I used to listen to those all the time. And it's not like the stories are not fascinating, because they are, but the unsolved ones keep me up at night.
Yes. I mean, I had to stop listening to them after a certain time because I was just getting really bad nightmares and anxiety, and it's a bummer.
Absolutely. And sometimes there are ones with surprise endings.
Those are the ones I keep going back to.
He lunged at me kind of like a bear, like with both arms, and I was backed into a corner.
That's Kelly Herron. She's talking about the man who attacked her in Seattle.
And I thought I could just kind of spin move off of him, but that failed, and he threw me to the ground.
Here's how it happened. It's a Sunday afternoon in March. You're training for your first marathon. You have to hit 10 miles today. So you're running through your favorite park along the waterfront, Golden Gardens in Seattle. And you love the way running makes you feel. Stronger, more confident, unstoppable. You're listening to music, so the first few miles pass pretty quickly. You take a quick break to use the public restroom in the park. You're washing your hands when suddenly you feel the hair on the back of your neck stand up. You turn and see there's a man in the women's restroom who had been hiding in one of the stalls. Before you can move, he lunges towards you, tackles you to the ground, and your life flashes before your eyes.
The element of surprise really can't be taken for granted. I mean, I was like, is this happening? And just the first thing out of my mouth, I just said, not today, motherfucker.
I've been really trying to take my self-care game to the next level this year. And part of my self-care routine is making sure my hair looks fantastic 24/7, 365. Because having fresh hair color is just one of those little things that does help me feel my best. But since I travel a lot, I don't always have time to spend hours and hours in a salon. And that's why I love Madison Reed. Madison Reed is reinventing the way women color their hair. It's the quality of salon color, the convenience and affordability of at-home hair color, and it's an ammonia-free formula with ingredients that you can feel good about putting all over your head. You don't have to sacrifice the quality of your hair color just because you're short on time. With Madison Reed, you can get gorgeous, Italian-made, multi-dimensional hair color delivered straight to your door on schedule for less than $25. And if you're worried about picking a color online, don't be. Madison Reed makes it super easy. Just answer a few quick questions about your hair and you'll be finding your perfect shade in no time. Head to madison-reed.com to find your perfect color today. iSurvivor listeners will get 10% off plus free shipping on your first color kit with promo code SURVIVOR. That's code SURVIVOR at madison-reed.com.
From WONDERY, I'm Wagatwe Wanjuki.
I'm Jenna Brister. This is iSurvivor.
On this show, we tell you about the attacks, the assaults, the manipulation, the fear, and the triumphs. About the people who fought back, who won, and who rise above their experience every single day.
I'm excited about this episode.
Same. I think this is a really awesome story.
Terrifying, but hopeful.
Her story has something for all of us, really.
Today, as you heard at the top of the show, we're talking to Kelly Herron. She lives in Seattle, and one day when she was out for a run, a man cornered her in a public restroom in Golden Gardens, a park along Elliott Bay.
Kelly fought back, and she used the tactics that she learned in a self-defense class. So we'll talk to a man who runs his own self-defense workshops in L.A., Jose Angel Castro.
I got chased one time by a perp in Santa Monica when I was out for a run, but I hid in someone's yard, so it never got to the point of having to combat them. But it's absolutely terrifying. And that's why we're excited to talk to Kelly today, because she actually did have to fight back.
Yeah, and we can learn about what self-defense workshops really do and if they're really helpful.
Absolutely. Also on the show, we're going to spend some time talking about safety tips for women that I found in an old Cosmopolitan magazine in 2013. So here we go. Here's our conversation with Kelly Herron.
I was training for a marathon back in early 2017, and on my first day that I had a 10-mile run, I switched up my route a little bit. It was a freezing cold, windy, rainy, kind of typical Pacific Northwest winter day. When the temperature hit a high of 38 degrees, I knew I couldn't put it off any longer. So I headed out and went down to Golden Gardens, which is a popular public park and beach in Seattle. It's about 4.5 miles from my house. So it was a perfect kind of halfway point. And they have a restroom at the end of the beach. And it was so windy and cold, so I wanted to kind of duck away from the wind and take advantage of having a restroom available to me while I could. When I went to wash my hands after, I became aware that something just felt wrong. I kind of got the chills up my spine. I turned around as I was using the hand dryer, and my worst nightmare was standing right in front of me, just straight out of the movies. Bad guy had his face kind of covered with his hoodie pulled up. I was trying to kind of wrap my mind around, like, oh, there's someone else in the bathroom. I almost said, like, oh, I'm sorry. But then I realized, like, oh, that's not a woman. That's a man. And that's not just a man, but that's like a crazy man. And the smell just really hit me and made me realize, like, oh crap, like this is bad. And this was all in split seconds. And he threw me to the ground. And just the first thing out of my mouth, I was just like, not today, motherfucker. I had just taken a self-defense class 3 weeks earlier that was offered through my workplace, Real Self. And one of the things that they taught us was, if you can seem like you're more trouble than you're worth, your attacker will often be like dissuaded. So I was trying to act like I wasn't scared, which is just as good as not actually being scared, but I was terrified. And he threw me down. I was on my stomach and he was on my back. I was so afraid of being raped, and I just started throwing my elbows behind me, and they weren't landing. He had on like a puffy coat, and I was starting to just feel really helpless and just still screaming my head off. And this bathroom is, it's concrete. The toilets are aluminum. There's like sand from the beach scattered throughout, and it's getting in my teeth, and my voice is just echoing off these concrete walls, going nowhere. And he was completely silent, which was also really creepy. I mean, just not a sound this whole time. And so I'm scrambling and trying to basically get off my stomach. I mean, my number one objective at this point is to not be raped, and I'm willing to die in order to prevent that from happening. So we kind of moved from the sink area into the large stall where he had been hiding the whole time, and I'm kicking and punching and screaming, and I managed to turn over to get off my stomach, and I kind of scurry underneath the stall wall to the middle stall. I just thought, like, well, if I can kind of like lock myself in this little stall, then he'll be on the outside and I'll be here. And in self-defense, they taught us, if something feels like the right thing to do, like, don't second guess yourself, just do it. And I remember looking up and seeing the stall lock, and I kicked the lock with my foot, but I had so much adrenaline that I missed the lock, but I kind of hit the outside of it and jammed the door completely into the frame. So the door was jammed shut. So you couldn't move it, open or close it. It was just jammed into the frame. And for like a split second, I thought I was safe. This is like all within 1 second. But my heart completely sank when he got in the same way I did, which he's a skinny guy. So he got underneath the stall wall too. And that was kind of the first time we were sort of face to face from the initial encounter. And I just remember, and I was pinned. He had me completely pinned down. The whole left side of my body was black and blue after. But I did free one hand, which I used to just claw him in the face and in the eyeball. And I remember, like, he kind of winced and he started bleeding, and I was like, oh my God, it's working. Like the things that you always hear to go for the eyeballs, but it really does work. And I started to get a little bit of confidence. And we also learned in self-defense to put hard bones into soft, fleshy places. So I was like banging him in the side of the head with my forearm and like hitting him in the face and the ear. You don't have to know how to throw a punch at all to do self-defense. It's really about creating opportunities to, escape. So I was hitting him in the head and face, and I flashed back to wrestling with my brother when we were younger. I have an older brother, and he used to like sit down on top of me, like hold me down and try to like, spit in my face. If you have older brothers, you know what this is like. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is going much better than when I would wrestle with my brother. Like I was actually making some progress. He pretty quickly got on top of me and started punching me in the face. One of the things I did not take away from self-defense was to cover your face. So that's a good tip that I didn't realize at the time. So I really took a beating to the head. And he was kind of like straddled on top of me. All these thoughts went through my mind, like what my life was going to be like if I didn't get out of this, and what it would be like to be raped in this disgusting bathroom by this just filthy human being. I got my arms over my head to the outside of that jammed door, and I was able to pull myself through the front from under him and kind of do like a burpee, basically, like just jump to my feet. And I started to pass out a little bit, and I just heard this voice in my head like, hang in there, Kel, like you got this, do not give up. You're so close. It's very much like when you're approaching like the last 0.2 of a half marathon, like you just went out of it so badly, but you're so tired. And that's really how I felt. So I got kind of one more surge of adrenaline and lunged for the door and managed to get out. And he just stayed trapped inside that jammed stall. And then once I got out, there were some people standing out there, and used a phone to call 911. And a guy was walking by, had like a beard and a backpack, and asked me if I was okay. And I asked if he had a carabiner, because he looked like the kind of guy who would, like one of those clippy keychain things. And he did. And so we carabinered the latch on the outside of the bathroom. It's like most public bathrooms have like a master lock type thing. And so we carabinered the outside, but we actually didn't really need to, because he never came out of the stall. The cops actually, like, when they got there, they broke down the stall door to get him out. So that was my day.
That's incredible. Thank you for telling us. What really stands out to me is all these things you've learned during your self-defense class.
It really gave me so much confidence. I'm so grateful to my company for bringing the self-defense class to the workplace. And I had been meaning to take a class because I was marathon training, and in Seattle, it gets dark at like 4:30 in the winter. So I was always running in the dark, and I'd been wanting to take a class, and I kind of had a misconception about self-defense, and I think a lot of people do, which is that there's all these moves you're going to learn. And people ask me all the time, like, what moves did you use? And really, self-defense is 90% just awareness, not being afraid to look a creepy person in the eye, because you might have to identify them later. Like when I got on the phone with 911, I was able to describe this guy to a T, except I thought he was a lot bigger than he actually was, because in my mind he was like a refrigerator, but in real life he was not that much bigger than me. The things that really came into play for me were be loud and fight like a savage. Just not worrying about throwing the perfect punch, but just hitting someone in the face with your bones is really effective. If you've ever been punched in the ear, it really hurts. So being punched anywhere, like in the face, nose, neck, ear, all really effective. So kind of just go crazy and just fight hard.
And like you said, create opportunities to escape. I love the way you said that.
Yeah, the goal is not to win the fight. The goal is to escape.
What are your thoughts on folks who tell runners that they should protect themselves, like carry personal protection or weapons in terms of safety?
In my opinion, it should be something that you can access easily with both hands. Like for me, people say like, you should have been carrying a gun or you should have been carrying pepper spray. And it's like, those things would not have benefited me because I was washing my hands and attacked from behind. So it wouldn't have really helped. And I was completely pinned down for most of the time. It's totally up to the person, but I think no matter what you choose, that you should have a foundation of self-defense without a weapon. And then if you do choose to carry a weapon, you should practice with it, like with a friend, kind of have them approach you from behind and see how quickly you can get to it. Even with a knife or something like that, it's like, if you're super comfortable pulling out a knife and opening it up with one hand and not have it taken from you, I don't really run with a weapon. I have it's called a kubaton. It's like a 5-inch aluminum kind of striking wand on my keychain, and I run with that. And that's the one thing I really wish I would have had that day, because it would have given so much weight to my strikes.
This is more of the stuff that I think the world needs.
Absolutely.
You ended up running your first marathon in Chicago afterwards. What was that like? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I didn't run the marathon I had intended to, even though I tried. But it was just a few months away, and I had a lot of physical injuries to my lumbar spine and my hip, really deep bruising, and then I had a lot of psychological trauma that took a lot of therapy to get through and to actually be comfortable running again. I felt so determined to not let this guy take anything from me. And I probably should have done a lot more self-care, which would be my recommendation to anyone who has been traumatized. Put your phone away and go to a spa for 4 days. I continued training with my mom, and we ran Chicago in October of 2017. God, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. It's crazy because it's like running saved my life in the assault, and then the assault helped get me through the marathon. So in my mind, I was going to cross the finish line and then be healed. And that wasn't the case. I think the big thing that changed was I quit looking back at what happened, and I had a more positive message and outlook about recovery and resilience. I still wasn't better. I still wasn't healed. As it turned out for me, the only thing that actually made me feel better instantly, finally, was when I faced my attacker in court, which was over a year later.
And what was that aftermath like for you? What was that experience?
I used to think I kind of understood what depression was. I didn't understand it until I went through it. And it's just exhausting. It's exhausting, and I tried everything to get better. I cut back my hours at work. I saw a therapist. I got outside every day. I got exercise. I tried eating healthy. I did support groups. I thought I could just check all these things off a list and be recovered. But you can't put a timeline on recovery, and you can't just checklist your way through, mental illness, basically. And for me, it was a trauma-induced depression. And depression is kind of an umbrella for a lot of things like anxiety, and, I had really bad PTSD, nightmares while your eyes are open and you're seeing terrifying things that aren't actually there. It was the darkest, most difficult time of my life. It was through, my relationship with my mom and having friends who I just knew were there, who were supportive, and who would feed me and come to my house and help me clean and just sit with me and just let me cry and be vulnerable. On the outside, everyone thought oh, you're a badass and you're a hero. And no, it's no, you're just seeing, 6 minutes of my life, not the year of darkness that followed. So it was a lot of work, and I'm grateful that I was able to kind of close that chapter and heal. But when I went to court, I was able to deliver my victim impact statement to the judge and to face my attacker and look him in the eye. And it was the most powerful healing experience I've ever felt. I couldn't believe how good I felt that day. Like, I went in feeling, I wasn't nervous, I was confident, I could not wait. And just going through the process of like writing out the statement and then delivering it in my strongest composed way, it was almost like it wasn't me. It was like I was the girl in the bathroom who was kicking ass. Like, I was that girl again for the first time since then. And then since he's been in prison, it was so cool. They delivered the sentence, and then the guy was being walked out, and the judge said, like, Miss Heron, like, your actions were heroic, and you really did a tremendous job here today. He said, did you ever end up running that marathon? And I said, yes, I did, Your Honor. And it was like, in that moment, I just felt completely free of everything. And like, I'm so grateful every day. It's like I'm experiencing happiness for the first time. Like, to feel good feelings after not feeling anything for a year is just like, I have a whole new appreciation for life.
Wow. So proud of Kelly.
What I love about Kelly's story is that she was just so honest about that, right? Recovery is not just like a linear line. You move forward. It's a cycle. And what we go through, or what survivors can go through, is really traumatic. And it's important to be patient with oneself. I love that she didn't mince words, right? Like, she fought back like hell, and she didn't want to be raped, and she wasn't. However, she was still assaulted, right? She was still attacked. So that still takes time to heal and recover from.
Yeah, she said she was pretty banged up. You know, her one whole side of her body had been pinned down and was bruised, and she had cuts and
exactly
had been through a lot.
But then the self-defense classes, right? She basically said that it helped her fend off her attacker. So it like saved her life, she says.
Absolutely. There was a one thing about the hard bones and soft spots.
Yeah.
Right? That was the thing that stuck out to her that actually probably ended up really saving her.
It goes back to like thinking about what can we learn about being able to act in the moment. I think it was really enlightening, and it made me really encouraged to look into self-defense classes just to see like just the variety of ways it can be helpful. I even read that self-defense classes can be helpful for people even after they've been traumatized or attacked, because it helps them, I guess, with their resiliency, and they feel more capable and comfortable moving throughout the world. So I know I'm a fan now of self-defense, as long as you get it from the right place.
Totally. And regaining your space. I dig that. And my neighbor actually offers self-defense workshops in Los Angeles. His workshop is called Get Home Safely. So we asked him to come into the studio to tell us more. And his name is Jose Angel Castro, and his company is Now House Education Group. I remember you were telling me the other day in the front yard that there's so much, because we're neighbors. There's so much that is different, you know, like you were describing in, you know, karate, that the opponents are facing off, they're squared off, and they exchange blows. But oftentimes when you're attacked, it's from a different angle. You don't know what's coming. There's not a level playing field.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting and such a true way of saying that.
Yeah. For me, sort of part of the inspiration out of traditional martial arts is seeing gaps in the way that women are traditionally trained in conventional self-defense. Women are taught to fight like dudes, whether that be a fight that goes to the ground or a stand-up fight, clenched fists at medium range, when in fact the nature of the attack for a woman is quite different than for a man. There's a physical confrontation. With dudes, it's that sort of traditional, I always like the analogy of shows about animals, you know, nature shows. For dudes, that's the two rams smashing each other until one of them gives up. Whereas for women, it's a very different thing. Your attacker is trying to intimidate, trying to overcome. Usually the nature of the space is different. If you think in your mind's eye of two guys fighting, you know, it's in a parking lot and they're standing toe to toe, and one throws a blow and the other throws a blow, and then back and forth. Whereas for women, most of the time, it's in tight, intimate spaces. Contrary to popular belief, most of the time, it's by somebody that you know or you're acquainted with, right? You're talking about getting cornered at a party in a dark room. You're talking about getting cornered in between cars in a parking lot. in a hallway, in a corridor, in an elevator. So that alone has a direct influence on both mindset and tactic.
You talk to your students saying that they need to be in touch with their spidey senses. One of the most empowering things for me as a survivor that I've done is learn to trust my gut, because I think especially women, we're taught not to believe ourselves, right? Like, oh, you're so crazy, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. My thing speaks a lot to mindset, which I think is probably the primary thing to really sort of nurture in yourself, is giving yourself permission to defend yourself, understanding the fact that you have the right to your own personal safety and your own self-defense. I like to call that the rumble, that rumble in your gut, in your belly, that thing that just it vibrates when something is out of place. So when we talk about personal safety and the self-defense mindset, we talk about how that rumble is almost always right. And we're not looking at it from the sensibility of being paranoid, walking around constantly looking over our shoulder. And that kind of speaks to that traditional thing, too, is being aware enough of one's environment that one knows when something's up. So that when your body gives you that response, that in your belly, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, something's up. So then I need to be either in a state of heightened environmental awareness, or then I get into closer proximity to something going down, and I have to be in what's considered situational awareness. That means that something's going down and something's imminent. And then I make choices based on that. And those choices aren't always physical choices. And actually, the best way to do that is if they're not physical choices. So by definition, a crime needs 3 components. It needs a perpetrator, it needs a victim, and it needs an opportunity. What the personal safety mindset, I think, does is it helps to mitigate the opportunity, right? I want there not to be opportunities for me to be the weakest antelope and thereby get attacked by somebody. So prevention is the number one key to self-defense, right? If it doesn't happen, then...
Absolutely. In a lot of your workshops, what's like the main first thing you tell people? Because I'm sure there's a mix of people who have either survived an attack or never have, but just want the tools for if it ever happens.
Right.
I guess, how do you bring them all together onto one playing field?
It goes back to one of the first lessons I got from my mom, which is nobody has the right to put their hands on you without your permission. So we start there because, there's an LGBTQ plus component to this too that's very important to me as well. That principle of understanding your right to be safe, I think, is something that unfortunately we neglect in our girls. I don't really like using this word, but I think it's an apt way of putting it. One of the most insidious things that we teach our girls is the principle of be nice. It gets in the way a lot. Because once something goes down, that's the thing that comes to my mind. And you hear women all the time, oh, I didn't want to offend him. I didn't want him. I felt sorry for him, or I didn't want to
hurt his feelings.
I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I didn't want to be judged. That mechanism is one of the reasons for the gaps that I see in training a lot. Because when you talk about training in the martial arts, a lot of women fall off at intermediate advanced levels. And that's when things start to ramp up. That's when you start to get hit more in your training, and when you start to really understand what it is to hurt somebody else, right? So taking that agency upon oneself is a huge thing when you're battling that lesson from really young to be nice.
Yeah, giving yourself permission to fight and to protect yourself.
Exactly. That you actually can physically, right? Because another component of that neglect is the physical aspect of being a woman.
Yeah, that's so true. That we are strong. And there are things we can do. And earlier in this episode, we talked to Kelly, talking about how she was attacked and she was wearing like her running pants and was able to kind of slither under a stall to get free. It's like we have a lot more power than we're taught.
I think it's just about being taught to do it smart. It's very difficult for somebody to work out so hard that if you hit them in the throat, it's not going to work.
Yeah, totally.
A lot of things don't take that much in terms of strength. And as long as you're being smart about it, as long as you're training well, anybody can defend themselves.
It seems like self-defense is almost like unlearning so many of the things the society tells us.
Absolutely.
To think, like how we address ourselves and the world and our relationship to it. More confidence. I mean, the world is not doing a really good job of teaching girls to like be confident and feel like it's okay to fight back. And it's also important to like recognize that. I really love that you brought that up. It's sort of like we're fighting against like what everyone else is telling us, and we're deprogramming maybe sometimes decades worth of misinformation about like what we can do.
Absolutely. And the parallel to that is boys on their emotional side.
Mm-hmm.
We're completely conditioned to not be emotional, right? So we neglect the emotional side and girls neglect their physical side.
So since we're wrapping up, we'd love to hear your elevator pitch, right? For folks who might be on the fence or really curious, why should people sign up for self-defense classes, men and women?
For me, Get Home Safely is a springboard. It's a springboard for people to be able to train more. I think self-defense is important because it's more tools in your toolbox. It's not something that you're going to go looking for. You're not trying to get in fights. But should you need it, it will be there for you if you're training well. Nowadays, especially in the climate that we're in, not just talking about political climates, but the climates in general, and it's global, there's a lot of stuff going down. And I think that there should be an urgency for people to learn to protect themselves. I'm not one of those people who says you can only learn things in one style or just do it only one way. But building one's mindset and physical capabilities to defend themselves, I think, is really, really, really important.
Agreed.
And getting back in touch with that intuition.
Yeah.
You don't want to just stay locked up in your house out of fear of an attack. How can we go about and live our lives and feel equipped should get real?
Yeah. And, it's really interesting because I was reading in preparation about different research around self-defense classes. And it's really helpful even for survivors of rape, right? It actually helps their PTSD. It saw that it helped them just navigate the world better.
Absolutely.
They're just better at doing, like, taking care of themselves, resiliency, like being able to move outside. And so it feels like, it's never too late.
At any age, it's never too late. After any experiences, it's never too late.
That was really educational, and I haven't even taken any self-defense classes yet. I really love what he mentioned, how one of the things we learned, and I think that's something you mentioned, Jenna, when you first told us about him, is that the way people fight is very different. There's the context of like men versus women, but even just to be more inclusive, we can talk about like intimate violence where it's very close and like upfront, and the person might use different techniques, right? Like what we would consider a man attacking a woman. And then there's that more, the street fighting that we've seen kind of thing that you say, like, you see men do that. So I loved that. It helps you hone in on what to focus on depending on what might be happening in front of you.
Absolutely. And that the chances of you actually squaring up and having to take a punch are so minimal. That's how we were describing it. You kind of square off, you trade blows.
Yeah.
But usually when it is more, intimate violence, the person's could be right up against you and you can't cock your arm back. Maybe you're, being restrained. So it's all those tactics to address how specifically people are attacked in the real world. It's not always like, all right, let's enter this ring and, duke it out.
Yeah. It feels like a lot more dirtier, right? Because they're not going to wait for you. Like, wait, hold on, I need to get my stance. They're trying to just like ambush you on the street.
Absolutely. And not feeling like we have to be polite. Like what he said about, if someone's looking to hurt me, they're going to be unconscious.
Yeah.
It's true because, we don't want to offend, or like if someone's getting a little too close, I don't want to make them feel weird. But no, like
gotta get
trust
over
your
that.
guts, the spidey senses. Like he was saying, if you feel like something's wrong, like remove yourself from the situation as best you can.
A big part of self-defense is kind of unlearning so much of what society taught us, right? To like ignore our gut and like, you crazy women, nothing happened. I love that. It was sort of like, no, like listen to your gut, trust your gut, just go with it. And I think that's something I wish I knew earlier, when I was younger.
Absolutely.
Now let's get to those safety tips from Cosmo.
So this list I found in an old archived edition of Cosmopolitan magazine.
I think part of the problem about these things, right, is like it's framing it as like this is going to save your life. And then some of it is being framed as like this is common sense stuff. And I think the whole problem is that, right, we tell women to do these things as if it's prevention, right? Like it's all in their hands to avoid victimhood.
This list is from a former FBI criminal profiler, and it walks through 21 tips for women and girls to know about kind of awareness and self-defense. So let's go through them and kind of see if which ones are prepared versus paranoia.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's go.
The first one says, if walking by yourself, get off your cell phone. Yeah, agree. A lot of people think that being on the phone is safe because the person on the other line can call 911, but that rarely works. Chatting can distract you. It's better to be aware of your surroundings.
That's true, but you can do both. Or you can pretend to be on your cell phone. I know people have done that. Also, I think they're not really talking about how sometimes talking on the phone makes you feel safer. Imagine we asked every woman in New York City to never talk on her cell phone when she's walking by herself, right? Like that's just, no one's going to get any work done. Well, you know, a lot of people are not going to get work done. So I get what they're saying. And I think the whole point really is just be aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, exactly. And the next one, too, leads right into that. If walking by yourself, hold your cell phone and be ready to make an emergency call. Many phones now have a button on the screen to dial 911 immediately.
Except your screen turns off.
Yeah.
So how am I going to be pressing this?
Yeah, I don't know about that one. But okay, let's go on to the number 3. So it's look underneath your car before approaching it in a parking garage or lot at night. I totally do this one.
I don't because my car is like 2 inches off the ground.
Yeah, everyone should get a Mini Cooper.
Everyone get a Mini Cooper. I don't approve of this. I rebuke this. I reject it. I'm not bending over. Also, you know, what if you're really tall and then you have like a really long way to go down and then you might get really dizzy and then that makes you more susceptible. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and the ankle slashers, I haven't seen anything like this for a while. I remember maybe 10 years ago reading something like this too. So I would do it out of habit, but also I do it out of habit in the same way I check behind the shower curtain because I saw Psycho in 3rd grade. It was more of a traumatizing, like, oh, let me see if anyone's in the shower.
Right.
No one has ever been in my shower, but I'm so conditioned to do that.
Right.
I mean, you're better off just wearing heeled shoes, and then if someone pops a limb out, stab them, right?
Yeah, or just if you're already in the car, just like run them over or something. I'd love to see a study on like how many times have women been killed by a man hiding underneath their car, like a random man.
That's a good call. Okay, we'll look that one up. Oh, yeah, number 4, actually, I totally do this one. If you return to your car and see that a van is parked right next to the driver's side, enter through the passenger side. I've never done that. Predators often use vans and will disguise it as a family car, even using baby on board decals. I had no idea.
Well, now that I know this is going to save my life.
Because I purposely don't park next to, you know, those burglar vans with the sliding door, just because so often I see news things where it's like, oh, a van pulled up and a woman was shoved in. And I know people where they were abducted and that's how that happened. But be safe where you park no matter what.
Yeah.
If something looks sketchy, find a different parking spot. Cool.
What if it's the last like open spot in the garage and I have to go to a meeting? I'm probably going to park next to the van, you know? Like, am I supposed to look at every baby on board sign with suspicion? Like, oh my God, I don't know. We can talk about prevention, right? There's risk reduction that might reduce your risk of it, but you're not going to be saved because at the end of the day, the assailant still exists and they're going to find a victim, right?
Yeah.
And so when we use this as like the only blueprint in terms of like how to save women's lives, essentially we're just saying the people who read these and the people who follow this, they can avoid being raped. So rape those other women instead. That's not the world I want to have. Like that's just not effective. We shouldn't be telling people to have these tips that are just like exclusively available in some locations. And that's the key, right? Like,
yeah.
Why don't we ever think about a world where we don't have to like do these ridiculous things, you know, rather that I just, these things like piss me off so much in case you couldn't
because it
tell.
doesn't address the real issue.
Right.
Gender-based violence.
Right.
Yeah.
That like people feel like they can attack us.
Yeah.
And they do often and they get away with it. So
exactly.
What are we doing beyond this?
I'd rather learn how to do a smoky eye, Cosmo, than avoid this. Because I'm really bad at doing makeup. Even this next one, you return to your car and it has a flat tire. Back away.
Back away.
Go back to wherever you
tire.
came from and call for help. Oh, because if someone wants to offer help, politely say no, thank you. Yeah, if you're on the side of the highway, totally. If I was walking from a restaurant in my car at a flat tire, I don't know. I don't know what I'd do in that situation. I don't think I would go back in the restaurant. I would call AAA, right?
Yeah. Like, what if the restaurant's closed?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things where it just seems like they're telling women to ask for help from other people. And there's all these assumptions that, like, these things will be available and that those people would be willing to help, which is not necessarily true.
Yeah, you're right. Because it says once assistance arrives, then approach your car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, yeah. This next one is interesting because a lot of times pharmacies have your information on file. But so it's tip number 7. When the pharmacist asks you to confirm your home address, whisper it to them. Broadcasting your home address among strangers on the line could compromise your safety.
You'll be like, I live on Sesame Street.
Yeah. Just give me my pills.
Ma'am.
Yeah.
Are these yours? Verify your address. I think our society does leave a lot of our private information available, right? Like super easy to take or to hear, or like say your social security, or like dial it into your phone. And so I get that aspect of telling us to be careful of like what information you're putting about yourself out there, because people take advantage of it.
Yeah, because even I think isn't it CVS or Rite Aid? They still sometimes ask you for your phone number.
Yeah.
Which I always tell them, I'm like, I can type it in. Just give me the screen and I'll enter it because I don't need to be saying my full digit cell phone number at a Rite Aid.
Right. And who knows if like what, that person might memorize it and they're like, oh, she's cute, and like they're a creep, right? And they take our phone and they hit us up later. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the thing, right? Like find what you're comfortable with. Like I said, I think what we're making fun of here is just this idea that like this is going to save your life.
You're better off writing it down.
Or ask them for a different verification system.
Yeah.
Right?
Something automatic that you can say okay on a screen.
Or like, yeah, this is the prescription number, or like the last 4 digits. I think that's also something. And that's something that maybe we should be pushing pharmacies to change rather than telling us to be whispering when we go out in public.
Very true. I dig that. And it says ditto if you're checking into a hotel room. If the person at the front desk says your room number out loud, which I think happens
pretty often.
Ask them to give you a new room. An upgrade. Ask for a better room for the inconvenience, and write the number on a piece of paper. Or when you check in, ask up front that they not say your room number out loud. Your room number should be your business only.
You right. I mean, you should be my business only.
And then before entering your hotel room, make sure no one is lingering in the hallway.
Wait. But you have to check before entering your hotel room. So then if there is, what do I do? Just turn around and go to the elevator by myself, or I go to the stairwell by myself and run away? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah. I don't think I've stayed in a variety of hotels in the full star range, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone lingering in a hallway before, besides another guest.
Same.
Yeah. That does seem a little, I don't know.
It's interesting. Because I think it also gives us this impression, right, that like people are lingering in the hotel hallways.
Yeah.
It's just not.
And then you're right. Number 10, always immediately lock your hotel room door after you enter.
Which happens automatically.
Absolutely.
Most of the time. I guess I shouldn't speak for every hotel, right? There's some more old school ones with keys, but
it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. I mean, locking is cool.
Mm-hmm. And then the next one.
Oh, yeah. When traveling, do not walk with your map in your hand. It is a dead giveaway that you are a tourist. Therefore, you are an easy target. How dare you be a tourist and want to know where you're going and use those tools to help you? You're making yourself an easy target.
Yeah. That seems like such an antiquated piece of advice, doesn't it?
Totally. Yeah.
They don't make maps, these huge fold-out things anymore when you travel. They are pocket-sized guides.
Options. Yeah.
And
they have cell phones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, if you're in the Hawaiian shirt with the giant camera around your neck and a visor and a 3-foot wide map, yeah, people will know you're from out of town.
Mm-hmm. And like, is it really about having the map, or is it that usually when you do have a big map, you're very distracted, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like here they're also, once again, kind of going at the wrong angle here. And they're like, you're going to make yourself an easy target. No, actually, it's like very often that tourists are distracted. If they're, if you don't know where you're going, it's very easy. And then your fanny pack is taken away.
Absolutely.
Not that I'm saying that I use a fanny pack. I'm just talking hypothetically.
I do own one. Yeah. For certain events. It's always good to have a fanny pack. Hands-free living.
Yes. I do not judge.
Definitely.
The next
one?
Yeah,
the next one. Oh, if you call for room service and you get a knock on your door, do not immediately open it. Ask, who is it? Make the person on the other side of the door tell you who they are before you open it.
And then you'll be safe because they told you something.
And they'll tell the truth.
Yeah.
I'm a predator. I heard you whisper your room number to the person, so I'm here.
Lucky for you, have really good hearing. So when you whispered, your room number, I knew.
Yeah. I think I always ask, who is it?
They always say room service. And then I look and then they have the stuff.
Or housekeeping.
Yeah.
They just identify themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a lot of hotel-based.
Maybe there's also predators who dress up as room service and wait and go to different random people's rooms and tries to attack them.
Yeah. Which in that case, don't let them in. If you're still staying there and you don't need housekeeping, use your towel twice. Stay alive.
Use your towel twice.
This next one is hilarious. If someone is chasing after you, that's not hilarious. Run away in a zigzag pattern. This will exhaust your attacker. But not you?
Yeah, magically you shall not be tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And then what if they're an Olympic runner?
Exactly.
Or what if they're really fit? What if they're more fit than me? I'm not sure. And then I'm more tired more quickly.
Mm-hmm. And this assumes you have space to run zigzag routes around the place. And that is advice, though, if you are being chased by an alligator or a crocodile, anybody, please do run in a zigzag pattern because they cannot pivot. And the final one, when you move into a new place, check your smoke detector for a hidden camera. Your landlord could be spying on you.
I love how they're just sowing all these seeds of distrust. They're like, yo, your landlord might be really fucked up. But how would I supposed to know what a hidden camera look like? And then what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, pull it out of the wall? That is interesting. Because, it assumes that there's a pervy race of landlords.
Right. There's only the landlord could have done it too, right? They like how they pointed the finger psst, it's a landlord.
Yeah, not the maintenance guy or your, or internet person.
Right, exactly.
I guess, check your home for hidden cameras no matter what. You could be on a prank show.
Just keep in mind, right, I think this is just one of the millions of examples of the shortfalls of us calling risk reduction prevention. It reduces your risk, but it's never a guarantee, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And can we just say free valet for women after dark?
Yeah.
Can we make that a thing?
I would
love
love
that. It really should be. I think. When I go out to eat or a show in a new neighborhood, I'll often valet if parking regulations or whatever, if it's in a dark neighborhood, I'll just valet my car. But then it's all right, $8 lady tax.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Extra, we always have to spend extra money.
Yeah. So any business owners out there, go ahead and put in a free valet stand for women.
Women, yeah.
After sunset.
Women, femmes, queer folks, too.
Anyone?
Yeah, because I was thinking,
anyone who feels unsafe?
Especially, especially with Pride and everything. And I've heard of, people having really awful instances and
of being attacked, yeah.
Yeah, or just, having a really homophobic Uber driver and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I think,
anyone who feels
people vulnerable, right? And, that I think could go a really long way.
Absolutely. And that is it for this episode of iSurvivor. Thank you to Kelly Herron and Jose Angel Castro for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this episode of iSurvivor. If you did, subscribe right now on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or wherever you're listening to this. If you're listening on a smartphone, tap or swipe the cover art of this podcast. You'll find the episode notes, including some details you may have missed. You'll also find our email address there, iSurvivor@wondery.com, and links to our Facebook group and social media profiles. We'd love to hear your stories.
If you'd like to hear more of iSurvivor and other Wondery shows, in addition to extra content, early access, and exclusive perks, you can subscribe to Wondery Plus. Go to Wondery.com/plus. Another way you can support the show is by filling out a small survey. It's at Wondery.com/survey. It'll help us make the show better for listeners like you. And who doesn't want that?
This episode was hosted by me, Jenna Brister, and Wagatwe Wanjuki. Audio engineering by Sergio Enriquez. Sound design by Bay Area Sound. Produced by Leah Sutherland. Executive produced by Abby Fentress Swanson. Executive produced by Marshall Louie and Hernan Lopez for Wondery.